Okay. It will be a very brief introduction to this concept that is called Qoñyr. In Kazakh musical understanding. Music has a lot encoded in it. Beyond decibels and silences, it has intonation, form, shape, and color. The introduction track is a composition by Galia Bisingalieva. She's a Kazakh violinist and composer living in Britain. I think it's important, as we're going to talk about traditional music, to mention musicians engaging in contemporary music conversations. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to listen to this sound piece called Balapan. I will not play the whole song. It's just so you can have some images also of the clip. Here is what Bisingalieva says about the album from which the song is. It's called Polygon. Polygon is about one of the darkest episodes in Kazakh history. The Semipalatinsk test site, located on the steppe in northeast Kazakhstan, known as the Polygon. It was the Soviet Union's primary testing zone for nuclear weapons, and they conducted 456 nuclear tests there from 49 to 89, creating more nuclear fallout than Chernobyl. The vast and flat landscape, the kind of place often misleadingly described as uninhabited, provided anonymity and isolation for the former Soviet Union leaders. However, the steppe was also home to a delicate and thriving ecosystem made up of mountains, hills, and pine forests running along the river Irtysh. The region held a sacred meaning to Kazakhs, the birthplace of intellectual literature, culture, famous for its musicians, poets, and writers. Bisingalieva's previous album was called Aral Kum, referring to an ecocide that happened to the Aral Sea that infamously dried up because of the Soviet monoculture mismanagement. So in both cases, we can see that she's working with music as a historical tool, a reminder of colonial violences that have long-lasting consequences on human and non-human life. But it is also her way to reveal these very material wounds that were inflicted upon a land. Well, maybe a quick note here, there is a festival of electronic music happening in the Moynak Desert, formerly a seaport on the Aral Sea. It is called Stihia, which means element. Just a note on the side. This lecture is fully inspired by an essay written by Anwar Dusenbinov for CTM. CTM is a Berlin Sound Festival in May of this year. A link to this very great essay will be shared after the lecture. Dusan Binov is a poet and a musician. He's co-curating the second Sonic Arts Triennale that will take place in Kazakhstan next year. So a lot of things happening sound-wise in the region, as you can see. Now I will play a song that is Qoñyr. Okay, alors. Okay. So this song is part of a register called Qoñyr, which means brown. Of course, the color of a composition and its relation to the performer's cultural belonging is deeply interconnected, so it goes also for the audience. And I don't know if you hear this brown, but it is worth to be explained, at least until the point it can't be explained anymore. Goethe's theory of colors is probably the most famous reference in the correspondences between color and inner state. He suggested, for example, affective tendencies of colors. Yellow would be allied with warmth and blue with withdrawal. Early 20th century avant-garde treated color as a generator of meaning. Kandinsky, for example, argued that color is a direct agent of inner experience. Each color, he claimed, possesses inherent emotional and spiritual effects, independent of representation. So yellow would be agitating, blue would be blue would awake highest spiritual aspirations. At the Bauhaus and later at the Black Mountain College, Joseph Albers taught that perception of color depends on its context, training students to see colors relationally in different surroundings. The concept of color in music often refers to the idea of timbre, which describes the unique quality of sound that distinguishes it from other sounds. And colors carry symbolic meanings, historically rooted, and provoke different emotional associations within different cultures. Terms from the color spectrum have been long applied to qualities of musical sound. The most famous color association might be the blue, with the blues genre, or the blue notes that are usually lowered. These notes played in blues are also associated with, obviously sadness in English language. This music color correspondence led to the creation of various devices. Alexander Scriabin invented clavier à lumière. It's a keyboard where each note corresponded to a specific color, following his synesthetic system. In a comparable way, Alexander Remington built a color organ. In traditional Kazakh music, the term Qoñyr holds a very special significance. It unravels different notions, encapsulating timbre, register, emotional tone, but also a mood and a philosophy. The word Qoñyr appears in the titles of multiple songs and gives the name to a genre in itself, as well as to a quality of a voice. One can say Qoñyr Daus, brown voice. That would be gentle, low register voice. In general, Qoñyr's sound is low, velvety, and rich in overtones. Traditional Kazakh instrumental pieces called kuy are played on a dombra, for example, or qobus. They are very different and had different use. A dombra is a long-necked wooden string instrument with two strings made of sinew, so animal nerves or sheep intestines, and it was played during celebrations and gatherings, while qobus, a bowed instrument covered in skin that also has two strings made of horsehair, had a sacred status. It was thought to have mystical properties and was used by shamans. It became a proper instrument for kuy much, much later. Qoñyr is also associated with a deep inner state, melancholic, gentle, pensive, maybe even nostalgic, much as the color itself might suggest earthiness, deep and warm soil. First authors of kuy, as far as we know, lived in the Middle Ages. As there were no fixed notation systems for these pieces, they were passed on from generation to generation based only on memory of the apprentice and the master. So the method of teaching and transmitting the compositions installed a very particular relation between the two. It is also important to note that there was no such thing as a proper lesson, as we call it today. The apprentice would study and memorize the cuys while they were performed in front of a live audience. The masters are both male and female. For example, Dina Nurpisova is considered as a total master and played until a very late age. There are recordings of her in her 70s, for example. The subjects of cuys are very different. Some depict specific individuals, some describe inner states. A lot of them sing the steppe, the vast fields of land, the rivers. Other cuy relate lives of animals, horses, or birds. Each part of Kazakhstan had very different techniques and styles, creating sort of schools, and a good listener could immediately recognize the region from which the performer was from. The first song we heard was played on a dombra, typical of the Western Kazakhstan, broadly saying. They were produced from regional wood, changing the sound of it from region to region. The next one will be played on the qobus, so the second instrument I was talking about. You can feel hypnotic repetitions and rhythms that lead you into a calm and reflective mood. It is called Qoñyr and is famous for having these more trance-like qualities. I will share this video. Yeah, so it's a very strong and recognizable sound. I think there is a horizontal quality to Qoñyr. Dombra, the first instrument we heard, is a simple instrument, very light to carry, 2 chords. You have to imagine the sound of these chords once a quick and confident gesture strikes downwards, how the sound makes its way through audience, through the step, a horizontal sound that is a bit veiled, as if it was a bit dusty. I'm also delivering a fantasy here, obviously. I'm the product of Soviet design, which is a chronic disease, but I'm also a product of the Central Asian diaspora, which means that the memory of my land, and I say land not in terms of my land, my nation, but in terms of materiality, in terms of ground, so the rocks, dust, earth. Sound carries emotional weight, memory, all these symbolic values, but also materiality. According to a scholar, Jangali Jusbayev, Qoñyr originated in Qorqut's time. Qorqut was a legendary poet and composer living in the 10th century. It's a foundational figure. But it gained popularity during Tsarist colonization. These songs gained a resistance character, as if the sorrow conveyed through Qoñyr became also a quest for authenticity in times where Kazakhs were progressively forced to sedentary. What is very important to note is that nomadic lifestyle implies an oral transmission of history and values. Shokan Valikhanov, a Kazakh scholar and ethnographer, described the music gift of the nomads as a heavenly song that descended very low over the Kazakh steppe and was heard by their people. Russian musicologist Zatayevich was very impressed by this oral music tradition. He recorded over 1,000 of Kazakh folk songs that were published in 1925 as a collection. One of his recordings, Gaku, became part of the first Kazakh opera, Kazhbek. Zatayevich managed also to record Kalibajanov, what we call Akhan, poet and singer working a lot with improvisation. We can briefly also listen to one of his songs, and that would be the last one that we will hear.
Geçkeneden bir göçkün sevdi Umrum azda göpegu Vaderiha kalkaşav Tentevan Tiyeldim devren Keşedim sayrum Aşkın kızı vali Yigitli gavütünde bu saldın say Karkaralı bağrında balaganım yer tuturup keş yatıp karagani Geçkeneden bir göçkün sevdim Bugün yakında yav vadarika kalkaşav cacaka Geldin gövren keşedin soyrun Vaşekin kızı vadi Yastıktan asiridindi Geçtin sağ ayran
Even though Zatayevich admired the Kazakh music culture, he was still unwillingly part of a global colonial enterprise that led to the disappearance of many oral traditions. But it is still thanks to him that we can have precious recordings of many, many melodies. He wrote, "Any musician having familiarized with this music should understand what was charged to the modest dombra, music of absolute exclusive depth. Archiving sound is a very complex project. As happens often when a sound can be recorded, it might be close to disappearance, changing its fluctuant nature to a fixed state. The ethnological approach to music takes out a lot of its magical part. Today we see that bringing in written notation led to the loss of the strong transmission culture that was present in this oral tradition. In fact, Turkic nomadic music is all about decorative notes, microtones that are not translatable in the regular Western notation system. This idea of space, of vastness and immensity infuses Kazakh culture and music, a horizontality that is very much infinite and brown. This untranslatable brownness shapes a concept that transcends language, and music can be the tool that would communicate this state when the language fails. As the space is shrinking, the longing for it is even more tangible. The global tendency, as we see it everywhere on different scale, is to go back to our founding mythologies. But while some throwbacks are corrupted and bluntly used to follow a nationalist agenda, there is also an organic and sincere quest for belonging. And I really invite you to read Dušan article, also because he represents this Kazakh modernity as a modern musician and poet who is striving without surrendering anything to oblivion. Voilà.